Our soldiers did a hell of a good job, a well-oiled machine operation that was, and not a single loss of American life, except a lot of Cubans apparently went down in that one. 32 has been the reported number. And real quick, on just on that point, Daniel Davis, why was Maduro being surrounded by Cuban protectors and armed personnel when he's got his own Army, Navy, and Air Force, apparently all commanded by Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello and Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino, who are still issues in this whole equation as we move forward? Didn't he have his own people? What's with the Cubans?
Yeah, he did. I think that part of the reason for that is to kind of rotate people around as an additional means of security, so that you try to avoid what apparently did happen, which is somebody on the inside turning against you. And so you had somebody that you think is definitely loyal from the outside, because Cuba literally relies for their economic life on Cuban oil, or on Venezuelan oil. And I think the idea was, I'm going to have somebody from the outside who we can keep a closer eye on. They don't have connections with anybody. They're not going to conspire with anybody on the ground, and that's going to keep me safe. And that's certainly not the way it turned out. I mean, they didn't go down passively. They did die fighting, but it turned out to be not enough.
Not quite enough. Now, as we move forward here, it's a big open question about what's going to happen next. Now, I mentioned the two military guys, the Cabello and Pedrino, who are really, I guess, diehard Chavista types, the military types. But you also have the current acting president, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. She seems to be kind of playing it not neutral, sitting on the fence, but she hasn't embraced the idea of working with Donald Trump going forward, but she hasn't outright rejected it and say, no, we're going to fight to the finish. They're still trying to figure out the hand that they've been dealt and what they're going to do going forward, because I know that Cabello and Pedrino both have criminal indictments against them as well, so it's conceivable anyway that another military operation could go in and cut off the heads of the what is of the military there.
Yeah, that's the implication. That's the threat, actually.
Yeah.
That, hey, we can come back at any time. But I'll just tell you, we can't. That card's been played. You'll never have another opportunity to go in like this with a surprise and have that success, because now then they're aware of how this would work, what the process is, where the dangers are, and now then they'll be ready. Even though they were caught with their pants down here, it won't happen twice. And if anybody thinks that we can just go on with another clean snatch and grab, it's just not how it works in the real world. The other thing that for Rodriguez especially is, like I said, that there's pretty strong evidence that there was some sort of inside double agent type cooperation, which is one of the reasons why we were able to get in so easily to the inner sanctum of Maduro himself. And whether that person has been identified, whether that's somebody who left with the helicopters, or whether they're still on the ground somewhere, there's got to be a fear inside of the power hierarchy. Who else is a double agent? So they got to be real careful right now. They're trying to figure out who they can and can't trust, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was a purge going on, who's even suspected. So they got to get their house clean inside first before they can feel confident. But she is in a tough position, Rodriguez, because she can't just start bowing to Trump, because all of a sudden she's going to find resistance within her own country, because they're going to say, don't just hand the keys over. But she obviously can't go too far with Trump, because whether there's another snatch and grab or just missiles or something, she realizes that she is indeed at a risk. So she's trying to find that happy medium. Now,
is that risk the consequence of the corrupt, I would say, the people benefiting from the Maduro regime, or who had been benefiting from it, diehard, potentially Chavistas that are still there? Because I get the impression, and I just literally talked with a guy who works for Breitbart who lived in Escape from Venezuela, Caleb Caruso, a real nice guy. The will of the people, although they can't go out in the streets and rejoice for fear that they're going to be rounded up and disappeared, which is typical there, but they're pretty darn happy that Maduro isn't there anymore. Their lives are terrible in Venezuela. So if the people generally support a transition to a pre-Chavista, better economy where they're making money and they have opportunity, isn't she on safer ground going that direction? Or is this what I would characterize, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, smaller minority of loyalists or well-connected people that big of a threat to her that she wouldn't bother doing that, even if it's the will of the people?
Well, I talked to a friend of mine here in Washington that has family still in Caracas, and he was telling me that his reports from the ground there are similar to what your friend said, that everybody's still kind of uncertain and afraid. They don't know what to think, and they don't even know what to believe in any case. They do know that all of the power structures of the Maduro regime are in place. The only thing that was taken out was the head, but the head is only the head of a system, and all the system is still fully in place. So they don't have freedom suddenly that they didn't have before Maduro was pulled out, and I think they're aware of that. But they also know, what are you going to do? You're going to have some kind of an uprising. Well, the same reason they didn't have an uprising under Maduro is still the same thing in place here. So there's no freedom in Venezuela. There's nothing has been changed on the system level. So right now, everybody's waiting to find out what's going to happen. And listen, we also have to recognize that all of the hardships on Venezuela is not just because of mismanagement, though that's a big part of it, or their corruption, but because of these crippling sanctions we've had on them for a long time. So it's some of the people in Venezuela are not real happy about even what we've been doing, because they recognize that some of this is being imposed on them from the outside, and so they don't really trust us that they're going to rise up and think that we're going to come and support them, because it could cost them their lives.
But that I get. But since the system, as you describe it, is still in place, the head may have been cut off, but the system is still there. We just briefly touched on the global realities. We got Iran, China, Russia, and then, of course, Cuba, which seems like it's on its last legs, all inextricably intertwined on some level with Venezuela. Just because Maduro's gone, their foot in the door and the relationship with Venezuela generally, that hasn't disappeared, at least as far as China, Russia, and I understand Iran had drone manufacturing facilities in Venezuela as well. Those relationships remain? Are they on, like thin ice? Where are we with them?
That's what everybody's trying to find out. I'm talking about Beijing, Moscow, Caracas. Everybody's trying to figure out, what does all this going to mean? And no one knows yet, because Venezuela doesn't know, because the United States, we kind of opened up this can of worms. We don't even know. We don't know for sure what we're going to do and what we're going to have next, because I think that there are people in Washington that are fully aware that this snatch and grab was this huge military operation, but had one solitary objective, which they went in, they got out, and came out relatively unscathed. But anything further than that, and you could get yourself into a real problem. So we don't want to go in real big. I think we want to pretend like we can and threaten that we will, but I don't think there's a big appetite for getting into a war that we might just start an open-ended situation that you can't succeed in, that could be real ugly. And then, look, China has, I think it's like $80 billion of loans and other kinds of security things that they have given to Venezuela that they need to be repaid. So they're going to be working hard to make sure their interests are not sacrificed. Russia has less leverage, but they certainly are the same interest. And then you have even talked about, what about Colombia? Are they next? What about Mexico? There's threats there. Greenland, for crying out loud. I mean, that's apparently on the hit list too. Apparently coming up within 20 days. We don't know for sure what Trump meant by that, but that's apparently going to be on the table too. So there is a lot of moving pieces here at the same time.
Yeah, I'm completely perplexed by the whole Greenland obsession, honestly, sir. Maybe the greatest piece of real estate in the world, but what right does the United States have to it? I keep waiting for that question to be answered. Anyhow, there aren't any drug boats coming out of Greenland, as far as you know. Are there, Daniel?
There's some fishing boats up there, and one wonders if fishing boats are going to suddenly be a problem. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't appear as though we're going to have to engage in another failed military exercise like the Bay of Pigs. Cuba looks like it's on its last legs. I mean, economically, they were already devastated with the oil embargoes and the sanctions. I know they were getting some gratis oil from Venezuela, a lot of which they were able to sell off in order to help their own economy or help themselves and line their pockets, the authorities in Cuba. But where do you see Cuba going if we completely cut off their ability to get any energy whatsoever?
I'll tell you, this is what perplexes me even more than the Greenland issue, is why this outright obsession with destroying Cuba. I've been to Cuba, and I can tell you, it was about 7-8 years ago with a church group that went in there to help some of the local churches, and they are so poor they can barely even feed themselves. They're a threat to literally no one. They're lucky if they keep the lights on and some food in grocery stores. So you had Coates the other day, a former director of national or a deputy national security advisor, say that they're a big threat to us, and now we got to go get them. And I'm just like puzzled. What are you talking about? There is no threat, and yet you heard Marco Rubio is just almost gleeful with the idea of destroying Cuba. There's nothing that we need to worry about. Why do we want to harm them? Because they don't pose a threat to us. I don't understand the obsession.
Yeah, I get. I think a lot of people remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. Russia actually had military installations there. They did have nukes 90 miles away, but in a world of hypersonic missiles that can travel halfway around the globe in a matter of seconds, the geography of the location of missiles isn't quite as important as it used to be.
And plus, that was, whatever, almost 3/4 of a century ago. I mean, that,
I know,
that
no,
doesn't
I know
exist
that.
anymore. So there's literally nothing there that would cause us as a state objective the destruction of Cuba. And to me, it just doesn't look good globally that we have this big power, the United States, that is claiming they're afraid of this tiny little island that can barely keep the lights on, and we're going to crush them. I mean, that looks like the classic bully, and I don't think that's going to help our interests worldwide if we carry through with that.
No, maybe it's our interest in bringing the casinos back and a vacation destination.
You could be right. I hope that you're not, because that would be pretty callous to destroy a government just so that we can get somebody to go in there and make some money on it. But
Just an
you can't eliminate that.
just an effort at levity, sir. That's all that was. Now,
Yeah, but it might not be levity. That's the problem.
well,
There could be some truth in it.
all good comedy. There is some grain of truth built into it. And real quick, anything that's really pronounced, since we're almost out of time, between the Russia and Ukraine situation, where are we on that one? Or are we still the status quo that we typically end on?
This tomorrow is Orthodox Christmas on the 7th of January, so things are kind of paused a little bit on the front. There's still some activity going on, but it's kind of low level. But there's a meeting in Paris today where Witkoff and Jared Kushner and the UN Ambassador Whitaker are there. I'm sorry, Whitaker are there to try and work on with Zelensky, who just showed up a minute ago with Macron. They're trying to nail down security guarantees for Ukraine. Whitaker said on Fox News this morning that he thinks they're really close. I've heard that before. I doubt that that's going to be the case, or at least close to what is the question. But at least some diplomatic activities are going on. I would look for kind of a lull in things until sometime after the 7th, and then things could heat back up pretty quick.
I hear security guarantees. I think of boots on the ground from several different major countries, including the United States. Is that maybe where we're going on there?
That's what they want. I don't think they're going to get the American boots on the ground, but apparently Zelensky's really